Many times we learn a new language because we actually want to have a better cultural understanding of the country that we are interested in. So, for example, with me in France, I visited France in 1998, and ever since then, I have been really impressed and enthralled by the culture of France. So, therefore, I learned French in order to have a better understanding of French. And with that ability to learn French, I've been able to look at old newspapers and watch old television shows and old newsreels of things that happened in the 60s and 70s and 80s. And this gave me a stronger understanding and awareness of the political, social ideology of people in France. And understanding culture through television, through newspapers, through things that are in the past are very important for you to understand modern culture as well. Take, for example, Family Guy, a television show that is shown throughout the world. It's called The Griffins in some parts of the world. In Family Guy, they make a lot of references to American culture in the past. And if you don't understand where those cultural references come from, it can be really confusing for you to really understand the joke. So to actually know where they come from and why it's funny will add a lot more to your experience of not just enjoying the television show, but also your experience of understanding American culture. Hi, my name is Dave. Welcome to Dave's English. If you're ever interested in taking lessons with me, just go down to my website at davesenglish.com, and on the front page, you can sign up for either a small trial lesson that's only 30 minutes, or you can take a full-on 60-minute lesson. I am here to help you learn English, to make sure you're on the right path of learning English and that you're not looking at things that distract you. It's important to know English, know it well, and I'm here to help you out. Now, the 1970s were bad in many ways. So we had a lot of social problems in the United States. We were just getting out of the Vietnam War. We had the Watergate crisis, in which the president of the United States resigned, the only president who ever resigned. We had our first vice president who hadn't been elected. We had a lot of problems. We also had a problem with culture. Our clothes were ugly. For some reason, people liked the color brown, and they would put wallpaper everywhere. I mean, the 70s were tacky. Let's not sugarcoat it. The 70s were tacky. The cars were even ugly. A lot of the cars in the 70s were just god horrible, ugly. Again, the color brown. Everything was brown in the 70s. I don't understand why that was. However, if we look at a time of television that was revolutionary in the United States, the 70s have to be the decade, definitely. When I was making my list for the shows that I wanted to put into this episode, I was going to limit it to 10, but I couldn't. I had to just keep going and going and going because there were so many shows that you can watch to help you know more about English as a language and American culture, both political and social. And that's what this video is going to be mostly about, are watching television shows that are connected to American culture instead of just pure entertainment. Now, at the end, I'll go ahead and throw a few videos in there that you might want to watch for entertainment, but they might not necessarily be technically, culturally connected to the United States. But they're fun to watch, and I recommend that you watch them. So the first show we're going to talk about is Happy Days. So Happy Days is a 1970s show that was based in the 1950s and actually gives us a lot of cultural references to the 1950s that help us understand it more, such as what it's like to go to the drive-thru, or what life was like in the 1950s with the jukebox and everything like that in a restaurant. It really gives that vibe of the 1950s. And while it is a 1970s show, it is a show that really does entertain us, but does give us an idea of how life was simpler in the Midwest in the 1950s. The second one is Three's Company. Now, this is about a guy who stays with two women, and the whole problem is that no men were allowed to stay with the women unless they were married. And in this case, he was a third roommate. And the way that they got around it is they said that the third roommate was gay, and the landlord accepted that. However, he actually wasn't gay. He was very much the opposite of it. So you always see them trying to trick the landlord into thinking that he's gay when he actually isn't. What makes this really interesting is that it's also a show from California. So you can really get an idea what 1970s California was like. I would say this exemplifies 1970s California. So before nowadays in Silicon Valley, this is a show that really gives you the idea of what California was. Number 3 is a show called Dukes of Hazzard. Now this one is a little bit hokey, a little bit kind of weird and stuff, but to me it actually shows what Southern culture was like in the 1970s. This actually has cultural relevance today in the United States. So if you talk about a show that kind of still holds its value nowadays that was made in the 70s, the Dukes of Hazzard would be it. So you would see the way of life in the South and just how people lived in the South. You would hear Southern accents, and it really just exemplified Southern living. So I would recommend, if you want to learn more about the South in the United States, Dukes of Hazzard is a comedy show that would give you that sense of Southern living. Number 4 is Taxi. And now Taxi is a show about a taxi company that was based in New York City. This is a show that actually really gives us an idea of how New Yorkers act and how New York culture is and just how people interact with one another. And every person in this show is very stereotypical of what an average New Yorker's like. And basically, it's just a show about a taxi company. There's no running theme or anything. It's just what happens in a taxi company. So if you actually want to learn a little bit more about New York in the 1970s, this would be a really good show to watch, because you can kind of get a feeling of just how that New York attitude comes out, especially if you look at somebody like Danny DeVito. I think his character in this show is absolutely great. The next one's The Jeffersons. Now, The Jeffersons is a show that's also based in New York City, and it's about a prominent black family who become rich, and they're essentially surrounded by mostly white people, and you can tell this difference between white and black culture in the United States in the 1970s. Now, George Jefferson was somebody who became rich because he owned a bunch of laundromats throughout New York City. So he ended up getting a penthouse in a big apartment on the east side. That's the intro to the show. And you can just see this conflict between him and his neighbors, and between George Jefferson and other people. It's a great comedy, but again, it kind of shows New York City and the difference between the races in the 1970s, even though more in a comical sense. The next one is WKRP. Now, this one is probably not as much culturally related, but it's more about the Midwest. And it really gives an idea of kind of what Midwest living was like. So WKRP is about a radio station that was in Cincinnati, and they actually talk about modern events as well. So there was a tragedy with the Who concert in the 1970s or 1980s, I don't remember when, that they actually talked about in their episode. So they are funny in this show, but they also talk about some subjects that are maybe a little bit edgier and really cause some conflict. So you can really see conflict in some of these episodes, but most of them are comical and it's just really funny. So I would recommend this if you want to get an idea of maybe a little bit more of what the average Midwestern Ohio, Michigan, Indiana, Chicago feel was like at that time. The next one is All in the Family. Now, this is probably the most controversial comedy, maybe even to this day. So in this, you have someone named Archie Bunker, who was essentially very conservative on race and other issues, and was always having arguments with not just his neighbors, but members of his own family. And they would talk about the political issues of the day, making Archie Bunker look like this ignorant person who didn't know anything, and the other people looking as if they're more wise. And the interesting part of this show is that Archie sometimes learned his lesson, but most of the times didn't. And it really shows, I think, kind of a racial tension and a social tension in the United States, not just in the 1970s, but today. And as a matter of fact, a lot of people called Donald Trump voters from 2016 and 2020 Archie Bunker voters. So it does have relevance to today's American society. So the last one I want to talk about is Good Times. Now, Good Times was based in Chicago, and while it is about race, it was talking more about the life within what was called the projects, the inner city in Chicago, and a lot of the struggles and a lot of the problems that people had there. Now, it is a comedy, so it is meant to be funny, but there are times where it turns very dark and very serious. So one minute you go this way, the next minute you go this way being serious. All in the Family does that in some aspects as well. There are some episodes that can become very, very dark. And that's one thing about a lot of these 70s shows is that they can be comedies, but some of them can go to a really dark place really fast. So it gives you this variety. It gives you this spectrum of what to expect during an episode or during the entire series. The show that I think was probably the most popular in the 1970s is MASH. So MASH is about a medical unit that was in the Korean War that was taking care of soldiers. And of course, this, like the other comedies in the 70s, had a lot of both comedy but yet political issues. This was made at the time where the United States was getting ready to leave the Vietnam War. And while this was based in the Korean War, the show, it was really meant to talk about what was going on in Vietnam. This show was very popular, and to this day, the finale for this series is still the most watched finale of any show ever in the United States, and still ranks very high as far as the amount of people that watch it. It still ranks today. So if you want to see something that a lot of Americans love, MASH is definitely a show I would recommend. Another show I would recommend is Mork and Mindy. So if you're wondering where Robin Williams really got his start, it was in the show Mork and Mindy. Now, Mork is Robin Williams, and he is actually a space alien that comes down. And it really shows us the Robin Williams that we ended up getting to know and love over the years. And this is really the start of Robin Williams' career. So if you want to watch that, I highly recommend it. It is extremely funny. There's nothing that you're going to learn out of it. There's no social or cultural thing that you're going to get out of it. It's just really damn funny. So the next one I want to talk about is Welcome Back, Kotter. So Welcome Back, Kotter is just a funny show about a school in New York in the 1970s where you have all of these kind of misfit students, because this was kind of in a rough neighborhood and a lot of the students there were rough. And Kotter was this kind of straight and narrow teacher that had a few family problems, but it was like he was trying to teach them the values of life. And it's a pretty enjoyable show, and it's pretty funny as well. But if you're wondering where John Travolta got his start, Welcome Back, Kotter is it. He actually started Welcome Back, Kotter 2 years before he did Saturday Night Fever. So if you want to know a little bit more about John Travolta, watch that show. Barney Miller is another show. This is another one based in New York where they actually, it's just a police precinct where people just go around and have fun. Again, there's nothing cultural to learn about from Barney Miller. It's just a really funny show. It's one that I highly recommend. And then the final show I'll talk about is Sanford and Son. So Sanford and Son is just friggin' hysterical. It's about a black family that is the operator and owner of a junkyard, and just Red Fox, who is Fred Sanford, his character, just one of the best characters of the 1970s. And if you're somebody who actually watches Motorcycle, if you're somebody who actually watched The Jeffersons, the one I recommend, and you like George Jefferson, you'll love Sanford and Son. It is definitely an excellent show to watch. So this is a really good show to watch as well. When you see cultural references in Family Guy, a lot of them come from the 1970s, and now you can say, okay, I see where that comes from. All right, well, that's it. I just wanted to give you some shows that you can watch in your free time to help you improve your English, but also will give you a little bit of awareness when it comes to American culture and kind of where we get our ideas, where we get our beliefs, and why we think the way that we do. And when we tell a joke every now and then from a television show, like, Name 3 people who have never been in my kitchen.
Have to take a look at your response. You wrote down, who are 3 people who have never been in my kitchen? No, I'm sorry, that too is wrong. The correct response.
You might know where that's from, but that's from the 1980s, and that'll be the next one that we do in this series. So thank you all very much. Have a wonderful day wherever it is you are, and I will see you soon. Bye-bye.